Good morning, students. I'm sure many of y'all would have already watched movies and read books on love and being in a relationship, right? So, this week we are going to look at a poem, a very special poem called Lines to an Indian Air, written by Percy Bysshe Shelley, which deals with being in love and how a beloved feels about the absence of his or her lover. Okay, so this poem is written by, as I said earlier, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and he is one of the top English romantic poets. By English I mean Britons, by one of the top British romantic poets who happened to write this beautiful love poem. Okay, so let's begin with a short introduction to the poem. This poem is written around or published around 1822. That was the peak of the romantic period. That was when people started to realize and write more and more about more and more poems revolving around this romantic theme, emphasizing the individual's place in the universe, focusing on nature, the nurturing quality that nature has on human persona itself. Okay, so these are the major points that which defines the romantic period, and also along with that, another important thing happened too. Along with all this stuff, there was a burst in exploration and industrialization happening all around the world, and it also resulted in this people's mind, as well as it also seared into the poets' poetries also. We can take this poem as an example of how something called Orientalism crept into the minds of English people and also the general West. So in this poem we will see how Orientalism, a concept called Orientalism, crept into the minds of the Western people. Okay, so let's begin with the analysis or paraphrasing of the poem. I'll start. Although Indian Air might give the impression that Shelley's poem is dedicated to Indian winds, it is actually a love poem, as more clearly implied by his other title, The Indian Serenade. Then the another title that this poem had was The Indian Serenade. It is, however, not a simple love poem. In fact, the Champak order mentioned in the 11th line is the only direct reference to anything Indian. The Romantics, when I say the word Romantics, it includes all the romantic writers of that period. We know that in general the romantic period is it stretches around from 1770s to the late 1850s. Although it's not a very strict time period or time order, it generally spans around that period of time. So these romantics, they valued personal feeling, the unadulterated charm of nature, and spirituality, which was characterized by fantastical elements, and all these features come into play here. Here, I mean this poem, The Lines to an Indian Air. An otherworldly quality persists through the entire poem, beginning with the first line itself. The speaker arises from a dream of his or her lover. It is still night time, but a spirit carries the speaker forward to his or her beloved's chamber window. Around them, nature with its starry sky, wandering winds, and nightingale songs continues to add the beauty of the moment, a beauty that is made surreal by Shelley's choice of words. The speaker is lying on the grass in the final stanza. He or she has fallen, overwhelmed by rapturous longings. Desire has made him or her pale, cold, and anxious. Only the kisses of the lover can revive him or her again. But would the lover's caress cure the speaker? The final line claims that the speaker's heart will break upon being embraced. The dramatic expression is a good of the conflicting emotions aroused by love. Ecstasy and contentment go hand in hand with ache. The conclusion of the poem thus leaves room for a nagging question. Is the romantic love humans experience a dangerous thing? So with this, the paraphrase of the poem is over. We'll do a very quick analysis of what this poem is about. Okay, so as I said earlier, this poem also has another title, and this poem is better known by that title, which is the Indian Serenade. The other title for this poem is the Indian Serenade. By this we can, by the word serenade we mean love poetry or love songs sung by the lover beneath or outside the chamber window. Chamber window is the bedroom window of the lover. I'm pretty sure we would have witnessed this in most movies, in most of the romantic movies, that the hero will be singing songs under the bedroom window of the heroine. So this is what exactly happening here too. So we'll just move on into the poem. I arise from starting with the first stanza. I arise from the dreams of thee, just follow your reader, in the first sweet sleep of night, when the winds are breathing low and the stars are shining bright. I arise from the dreams of thee, and a spirit in my feet had led me, who knows how, to thy chamber window sweet. So the very first stanza itself is very, very surreal, that is out of the world. We do not really know whether this particular person, this poet persona, is really awake or is he still dreaming. Because in the middle he says that, and the spirit in my feet hath led me who knows how. So we are not very sure that this person is awake or whether he's still dreaming or in this dreamland, and he's thinking about his lover all the while. And also he says this, when the winds are breathing low and the stars are shining bright, I arise from dreams of thee. He's actually inverting the idea of dream, or the idea of getting the dream in the first place here. When do we feel when do we feel like dreaming? When whatever surrounding is calm, and when it is in the night time, or when generally when the surrounding is calm and quiet, right? But this is when exactly the poet is arising out of his dream. When we see when the winds are breathing low, it means that the winds are not strong and the stars are shining bright. I arise from the dreams of thee, and the spirit in my feet hath led me, who knows how, to thy chamber window sweet. All these lines, it indicates that the poet is dreaming, but he is claiming that he is just arising from that dream of his. That he is arising from the dream of his beloved. So we can see that he is in a perpetual state of dreaming. He does not realize whether he is awake or whether he is dreaming, and that love is very intoxicating to him. He just cannot distinguish reality from his dreamland anymore. Everything blends together, everything merges together, and he himself is confused, and he confuses the reader as well. But that is the beauty of love, isn't it? We all get very confused and carried away by that. So in the first stanza, we can see that the poet persona has awakened, or we are not very sure whether he is awakened or not. He is standing beneath the chamber window of his beloved. I'll move on to the second stanza. The wandering airs, they faint on the dark, the silent stream. The champak odors fail, like sweet thoughts in a dream. The nightingale's complaint, it dies upon her heart, as I must on thine, O beloved as thou art. So in the second stanza, we are introduced to the feelings and emotions that the poet has towards his lover. He says in the first few lines that the wandering airs, they faint on the dark, the silent stream. He says that the moving airs, or the moving wind, wandering airs means the wind which moves, right? So the wandering airs, they just faint on the dark and silent stream. They cannot withstand it. They all just blend in with one another. The stream is moving, the wind is moving, everything is in a perpetual motion. Everything is attracting him towards his beloved, not in a very boisterous way, not in a very strong way, but everything happens so gently and slowly. The champak odors fail. Here, this is the only place where something Indian is mentioned. Champak is a kind of a flower, is a kind of yellow flower, and this is the only time in the entire poem that the poet has mentioned something that is Indian. Alright, so the champak odors fail like sweet thoughts in a dream. And again we are put in a confusion that whether if this poet persona is dreaming or whether he is awake. So he says that even the champak or the such sweet smell fail, and like it fails like something which happens in a dream, something or any other smells or incidents which happen in a dream, we would most likely tend to forget it when we wake up, right? So similarly, this beautiful champak odor, which seems so real, also tends to fail him. So the nightingale's complaint dies upon her heart. As I must on thine, O beloved, as thou art. So he is mentioning here that his feelings for his beloved is so strong that he has to die upon the bosom of his lover. I read out the last stanza. Oh, lift me from the grass. I die, I faint, I fail. Let thy love in kisses rain on my lips and eyelids pale. My cheek is cold and white, alas. My heart beats out loud and fast. Oh, press it to thine own again, where it will break at last. In the last in the last stanza, he speaks about the torture of love. He speaks about how intoxicating and how painful it is to love his beloved, because he feels like he's going to die. He wants to die, but he couldn't die. And he says that even the very first encounter with his beloved is very worrisome, because he goes, his cheek gets cold and he gets white, and his heart beats loud and fast. They are all symptoms of of being extremely happy as well as in an extreme state of uncomfortableness. He's not so comfortable, yet he is very happy, and he is in this very confusing position, yet he is willing to be there as long as he could. So he shows his reader how confusing yet how pleasant this experience of being in love can be. Okay, so this entire poem is about that. The major themes are the intoxication of love and how a person in love would feel, and also it is also about another major theme called Orientalism, though it is not so loud. It doesn't come out so as loud as it would in some other poems. It is also, the silence is also so deafening that we have to mention it here. The Orientalism, how it is being used in this poem, how this concept is being used in this poem, used or not being used in this poem. Okay, so let's begin with the title. It is given as Lines to an Indian Air, but the only thing that is very Indian about this poem is the use of the word champak odors fail, and that is the only time when something mostly Indian is being mentioned. So Orientalism now has gone into an entire branch of study in itself, but at the time of the Romantics, actually Byron is another famous poet, romantic poet. He is the one who coined the term Orientalism in the first place, and during the Romantics period, Orientalism came to be known as something that is very exotic. That was a time when all these Western people, British people and all the Portuguese and French started exploring the rest of the world, and when they came towards India and China and all these Eastern countries, they became so overwhelmed and they became more excited, and they were more baffled by the exotic nature of these places. Exotic itself is a very controversial term to use, because all the culture, the art and the livelihoods of people were very, very different. The lifestyle of the people was very different from that of the Western countries. So they started to fantasize or romanticize all these features or all these stuff about the Eastern countries, and they started to write about the Eastern countries more often in a very romanticized version of that, as well as in a very demeaning or in a very white supremacist attitude. They also showed such white supremacist attitude towards the culture, the Oriental culture as well. So in this poem, it puts Orientalism, or it puts the Indianness in a very positive light. But when we talk about other poems in which deals with Orientalism, we cannot be so lenient towards the other poets as well. So in this poetry, this Indianness is being highlighted in a very positive way. But if you ask the other poets or the rest of the poems also had featured Indianness or Orientalism in general in a positive way, then the answer would be definitely no. In fact, even the title of we take the title of the poem, Lines to an Indian Air, only one something that is Indian is mentioned here. So that itself indicates the lack of the lack of interest or the lack of knowledge, not exactly knowledge, but the lack of interest into incorporate more things Indian into the poem in itself. When you read the poem, in the beginning, as I said, this poem is entirely surreal. We are not in a position to know whether the poet persona is dreaming or he is awake. So everything that is associated with Orientalism, everything which is associated with the Eastern countries were also somewhat in that diurnal state of waking up and dreaming. They are not very sure about our culture, yet they try to romanticize it and exoticize it, to pose it as something which is beautiful and something which is unattainable. So Orientalism is basically how the Western countries perceive or understand the Eastern countries to be, and it is mostly brought out through the poems and paintings and other forms of literature in the Western media. Okay, so that is Orientalism for you all, very short in a nutshell. We'll discuss even more about it when we meet in Zoom class, and also please attend the Zoom class so that we can complete the book back exercises and also the poetic devices that are being used in this poem. Okay, so that is it. Thank you so much. Meet you in class. Bye.